Okay, this is 6.6b as in Bravo in college algebra, and we are continuing on with our rational inequalities. Before we just did polynomial inequalities, now we're going to do rational inequalities, and the difference between the two is the rational inequalities are basically fractions, polynomial in the numerator, polynomial in the denominator. So, for example, they give us one example here, the average cost, and if you remember, you've seen that before, and that line above the C means average, equals 5. We're talking about TVs here. Sorry, like I say, I'm trying to do this in the front seat of my truck while I'm writing, and it's a little tricky. The average cost per set for the production of 42-inch plasma televisions is given by... Do people even use plasma televisions anymore? Anyway, where X is the number of hundreds of units produced. Okay, so C is the cost. Okay. X is the number of units produced. So if we get a certain number of units produced, like 800, put it in here, it'll give us the average cost per TV. Okay, so we can find out the average cost so we know how much to charge, I suppose. Alright, so find the number of televisions that must be produced to keep the average cost to at most $500 and $590. Alright, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the numbers that will go in here for X, which there will be more than one, that will make the average cost of a plasma TV no more than $590. So that means it can equal $590. So it's going to be a less than or equal to, because we're looking at a cost that's less than or equal to $590. So we're going to write this as, my pen here, $5,000. This formula there at the top, over X. We want that amount to be less than or equal to $590. Okay. That being the case, what we need to do is we need to rewrite this with 0 on one side of the equal sign. Okay, that was the first step, right? An equivalent inequality was 0 on one side and everything else on the other. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We've got 5, gosh, my writing is terrible, plus 80x plus x squared over x, and we're going to subtract 590 from it, so we get 0 on one side of the equal sign. Okay, so that's our first step. Combining the terms over a common denominator. Okay, so we need to take this whole thing and put it over x, which means we're going to have to make this an x over x. So now they have common denominators. So that gives me, okay, so I'm just doing simple algebra, not doing anything really weird here. Alright, so we've got 5. I wish I had really good handwriting. I've seen some people do this stuff that have had really good handwriting. Always makes me envious. Okay, that loon sound was my wife's text, so I'm going to pause this and see what we've got going on here. Now I can combine like terms. So I get x squared minus 510x, because I'm combining this was a 590, plus 5,000 is less than or equal to 0. And we didn't do anything with the x, so the x is still down here. Alright, so let's go ahead and factor that. And that's still over x, and that's less than or equal to 0. Okay, so now it's factored as low as we can go. Next step is to figure out what our answers are. Well, I know our answers are going to be x equals 10, 500, okay, for these two, as well as looking at what makes the denominator 0. So 0 makes the denominator 0. Okay, so we cannot have a negative number of units, so we know these are our only options for our answer. So the average cost is defined only for values of x greater than 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we've got here. Let's do our whole line check for positive and negative numbers. So we've got 0, we have 10, and we have 500. So it breaks that up into four areas, but anything negative we don't care about. So really we only have 3 areas here. So let's take our x minus 10 and our x minus 500 over x, and let's plug a number between 0 and 10 in here. Okay, so let's put 5 in here. So 5 minus 10 is a negative, 5 minus 500 is a negative, negative times a negative is a positive, over a positive gives us a positive. So notice I don't care what my answers are. All I care is about what happens with positives and negatives. So you don't have to actually do the math. So let's say we pick a number here. Let's say we pick 20. 20 minus 10 is positive. 20 minus 500 is negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. Over a positive gives me a negative answer. Okay? So are you catching on? I'm just concerned about the negative and the positive answers, not what the answers are. So let's pick a number like 600. 600 minus 10 is positive. 600 minus 500 is positive. So positive times a positive is a positive, divided by a positive gives me a positive answer here. Okay, so that makes it real easy to just go through here and figure that out. So the function f of x is negative right here between 10 and 500. So the solution is 10 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 500. So why did I pick that? I picked this area right here because I needed my x value to be negative, meaning it's going to be lower than the $590 cost. And since it makes this less than or equal to 0 between 10 and 500, then it also makes this less than or equal to the $590. So that's why I'm picking numbers here. If I pick numbers here, it'd be greater than the 590. If I pick numbers here, it would also be greater than the 590. So that's why we picked this. So there is my answer. All right, so that's it for 6.6.